Hey, so this is going to be your second lesson on the week, and it's actually going to be taught on Tuesday as well, which says representing benchmark fractions and percents. Okay, so we're going to practice making two equivalent fractions for each of the fractions below. Now, there's numerous ways to do this, to make equivalent fractions. One way I like to do is we have the fraction here, 6 over 9. So I can do one thing. I can multiply the 6 by the 2. So if I multiply the top by 2, it means the bottom has to be multiplied by 2. So this gives me 12 over 18. 12 over 18 is actually the same fraction as 6 over 9. I just multiplied everything by 2. It doesn't change. It doesn't mean that they're still not equivalent, which means equal. Okay? Another thing I can do is I can take 6 over 9, and then I know the factors for 6 is 2 and 3, because 2 times 3 is 6. And I know the factors for 9 is 3 times 3 is 9. So it means they're both divisible, which means you can divide both these numbers by 3. So I'm actually going to divide both of these by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So it's 2/3. So that means that 2/3 is equal to 6/9, and it's also equal to 12/18. They're all the same fractions, even though the numbers are changing, they're still related to each other. Down here, what I just did down here is actually called simplifying, meaning that 2/3 is the simplest form. It means it's the smallest form it could possibly be in. Okay? 12 over 18 is a bigger form. You can actually even make it bigger. I can do 6 times 10 and 9 times 10 and make that 60 over 90. And I'll do that on this one. So I can multiply this by 10, multiply this by 10, and I can make that 80 over 100. And just to recap on what we did on the last lesson, we know 80 out of 100 is 80%, because that's 100%, that's a whole. Just to refresh. I can also simplify 8 out of 10. I know for a fact 8 out of 10 are both even. So I do know they're both divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide them by 2 to see if that'll get me to their simplest form. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that's 4/5. And it actually is still the simplest form. So I just figured out 8 over 10 can be reduced to 4/5, or 80 out of 100 is also an equivalent fraction. So meaning 4/5 is equivalent to 80 out of 100. Well, we just said 80 out of 100 is 80%, meaning that 4/5 also has to be equal to 80%. I just thought it was fun. Okay, let's try another one. So 5 out of 4. Okay, so it means that bigger number's on top, meaning this is greater than a whole. Okay, so I can multiply this by 2, and make that 10 out of 8. 10 out of 8 is still equivalent. I can also take 10 out of 8 and multiply that by 2 again, and make that 20 out of 16. And that's still equivalent. It's just if this is considered an improper fraction. And generally we leave them improper, but I will show you how to make them called they are mixed fractions. Okay? So that is how you represent equivalent fractions. You can make them smaller if it's possible, or you can make them bigger by just multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number. Okay, so as we were just discussing, the fractions you wrote compared to the original fraction, they all represent the same value. And you'll start noticing patterns more and more when you get into higher math classes. Okay, let's do some vocab. A fraction can be written as a percent when the denominator is 100. And we were just discussing with the fraction above, when we had 80 over 100, we already knew it was 80%. If the denominator is a friendly number, you can scale up or down or use a proportion. So that word proportion, you're going to hear a lot in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, okay? So we're going to be doing a proportion, and I'll show you how to do that on our next one, on our next slide. So here we are going to convert each fraction below, so the denominator is 100. In 7th grade, generally we have a little bit harder numbers, so we use a proportion. In 6th grade, you have a little bit easier numbers. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to change the fraction below to have a denominator of 100. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to set up a proportion. So I'm actually going to write this bigger. So I have 6 over 20. And when I write a proportion, I want to set it equal to x over 100. The reason why I do that is because I want to convert them to a percentage, or basically to have a denominator of 100. Well, the denominator is the bottom number. And so it means I want to know what is going to go over the 100. So I want to figure that out. So the first way, it'll be a way that you use majority of the time, is we're going to do something called cross multiply. So cross means you're going to go across. So I'm going to take this x, because that's what I'm solving for, and I'm going to go across downwards to the 20. And since it's called cross multiply, we're going to do x times 20. Well, since I do not know what x is, it's just going to be, I'm just going to write this as 20x, meaning 20 times x. They just pair up. So we have to do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to cross multiply 6 to 100. So you're going to do 6 times 100. Well, I know 6 times 1 is 6, and you just put the 2 zeros on the bottom, or not on the bottom, next to it, and that would be 600. Now I actually have an equation, which is which is 20x, or 20 times x, equals 600. So what I'm trying to figure out is, what can I multiply by 20 to get to 600? Well, let me give you a simpler problem. What if I gave you the problem 2x equals 6? So what can I multiply by x to get me 6? Well, we know, what can I multiply by 2 to get to me 6? So I know that if I take a 2 and I multiply it by 3, that equals 6. The reason why I know that is because if I actually divide both sides, so divide sign, the symbol, divide by 2 here, divide by 2 here, these cross out and equal a 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3, which I just proved. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our original problem, which is 20 over 60. And I'm going to do divide 20 to both sides. So this cancels out, and you want to write a 1 over it. That's fine. So now I'm going to divide 20 into 60. Okay, and since we are in my advanced class, there's a shortcut we can use. So you see how these zeros are on top of each other? They actually means that you can divide them out. That means you can cross them out. Basically, you're just dividing by 10, but you're just crossing out the zeros. So instead of dividing 20 into 600, which is a big number, all I have to do is divide 20. It's not 20, excuse me, I apologize. why is that not working? Is divide 2 into 60, which is much easier. Much easier, excuse me. So how many times does 2 go into 6? Well, we already know 2 goes into 6 3 times. So as 6 comes down here, subtract, bring down the 0. Well, 2 goes into 0 times. So I got to make sure to write that 0. So 2 goes into 60 30 times. So x equals 30. So it means the answer up here will be 30. Now, I know that can be pretty daunting. We're going to do this a couple more times, trust me. No worries. Okay? But I want to show you an easier path. So I'm going to erase this to get some more room. So I'm going to still set up a proportion. So I still have 6 over 20, which is equal to x over 100. I don't know why this is not working very well. So this is actually very similar to the equivalent fractions we just did. Basically, I did something to the 20 to get to the 100. Now that means I either multiplied or divided by a number. Generally, I would assume I would multiply by a number greater than 1 because it increased to 100. So I know 20 times 5, and I don't want to use that x because that's not appropriate anymore. 20 times, so we're going to use a dot, times 5 equals 100. So if I multiply the bottom number, the denominator, by 5, it means I'm going to have to multiply the numerator, the top number, by 5. So 6 times 5 equals 30, which is the same answer we just got previously. So that's one way to check yourself. Okay, because sometimes these numbers aren't that easy. You can't ever figure out what to be multiplied to get to 100. So now let's try another one. Okay, so we have 7 over 10. I'm going to set up a proportion, say equal to x over 100. Okay, so you're going to cross multiply. X times 10 is 10x. 7 times 100 is 700. I got to figure out what 10 times something gives me 700. So I'm going to divide 10 into 700. And these cancel, this side cancels out, leaving me a big 1, x. So that just becomes x. And remember, when you have zeros that pair up like this, they can cross off. So now I'm just dividing 1 into 70. Well, 1 divided into 70 is just 70. So it means my final answer is 70. So this would be 70 over 100. Now we can try the shortcut way. So we have 7 over 10 again is equal to x over 100. Okay. So I had to multiply something by 10 to get to 100. Well, we know 10 times 10 is 100. I'm going to put the 10 in the parentheses. So 10 times 10 is 100. So if I multiply the denominator by 10, I don't have to multiply the numerator by 10. So 7 times 10 is 70, which is the same answer we just got. All right, let's try the next one, last one. Well, on this slide. So we have 3/4. So you're going to set up a proportion. You're going to do 3/4 is equal to x over 100. Okay? So you're going to cross multiply. And so x times 4, as we know, is just going to be 4x. And 3 times 100, which is 300. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. This cancels off to 1. So x just remains So we're going to divide 4 into 300. Well, 4 can't go into 3, so I'm going to go on to the next number. 4 goes into 30 7 times. So that'd be 28. If I could write a 2. There we go. Subtract that. Subtract it, you get 2. Bring down the next 0. Well, 4 goes into 20 5 times. So my answer would be 75. All right, so now let's make sure I did it right by using the shortcut way, which is not always a guarantee does work, but it will, and I'll tell you why. So you're going to do 3/4 again is equal to x over 100. The reason why I know I can do the shortcut way is because I know I can multiply something by 4 to get to 100. So 4 times 25 equals 100. So if I multiply the bottom by 25, I have to multiply the top, or the numerator, by 25. So 3 times 25, which is 75. The same answer we just got. And that is how you use a proportion. Okay, so I'm going to complete the table. We have another table to complete. I'm going to do the first 3 with y'all, and then the next 3 you're going to do by yourself. And again, you might want to be doing this on scratch paper. So the first one is 3 over 25 is equal to x over 100. Okay, so since we just did proportions and I explained the shortcut way, I'm going to see if I can use a shortcut. So what can I multiply by 25 to get to 100? Well, we kind of discussed this. It's 4. So it means if I multiply the bottom by 4, I need to multiply the top by 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. So that'd be 12%. All right, let's do the next one. Oh, that's a 35, not 25. So it'd be 35 over 50 equals x over 100. All right, so what do I multiply by 50 to get to 100? Well, you just multiply by 2. So 50 times 2 is 100. So we're going to do 35 times 2, which is 70. So that'd be 70%. All right, last one. So you're going to do 19 over 20, which is equal to x over 100. So what do I multiply by 20 to get to 100? Multiply it by 5. And again, I don't want to use that x. Why is that back button not working? So then you have to multiply the numerator by 5. So 19 times 5 is 95. And that is how you do the shortcut. But remember, you have to make sure that the denominator can be multiplied to get to 100. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and try the next 3 by yourself. Okay, so when you've done the next 3, I'm not going to show you how. You should have gotten 32, 120, and 65%. Okay, so go back. If you didn't get these answers, go back and check your work, or come find me at tutorials. All right, so let's move on to the back. So they're asking you, what can you do if I gave you a more complex fraction like 1/8? So I have 1/8. And they're asking you to find the numerator if the denominator was 100. So it'd be 1/8 is equal to x over 100. Well, you know I showed you that shortcut. So unfortunately, the shortcut does not work in this case because there's nothing I can multiply by 8. Well, there's nothing pretty. There's no whole number I can multiply by 8 to get to 100. So you're going to have to use the long way I showed you. That's the reason why I showed you both ways. And that's also the reason why I love math, because you can do multiple things. So we're going to have to cross multiply. So you're going to do x times 8 which is 8x, and 1 times 100, which is 100. So you're going to divide both sides by 8, and this cancels out, leaves you a nice 1, so then the x comes down. So now we're just going to divide 8 into 100. So 8 goes into 10 one time. If I could write the 1, there we are. You subtract this, you get 2. And you bring down the 0. 8 goes into 20, would be 2 times. So it'd be 16. 20 minus 16 is 4. I have a remainder. I don't want to put this over a fraction. I want to make this decimal. So to make a decimal, you can put a big decimal up in the answer, and then you're going to add a 0 behind it. And then you're going to bring that down. So 8 goes into 40 5 times. This would be 12.5. And that will be the answer, which is also the percentage. So that is how you find it if it's a more complex fractions, which we've already been practicing. All right, so let's learn some more vocab. Divide the strip or number line into the same number of sections as the denominator. Shade the number of parts indicated by the numerator. And estimate the value. Okay, so we have these strip diagrams below. We have 1/8. Okay, we already personally figured out that if I set up a proportion of 1/8 is equal to x over 100, the x equals 12.5, which is also could be a percentage. Okay, I can also show you this using a strip diagram. So this strip is a whole. So at 8, which will be the same thing as 8 over 8, that's 100%. So that means halfway, which would be about here, I believe, a little bit, not perfect. So at 4 would be 50%. I'm going to erase this so I can have some room. So I just did a half. I divided 8 by 2 and got 4. So 100 divided by 2 is 50. So if I divide 4 by 2, again, that gives me 2. And 50 divided by 2 is 25%. So I can do that again. I can divide 2 by 2, which is 1, and then divide 2 into 25. And so 2 goes into 2 one time. Man, what is wrong with this pen today? Subtract, you get 0. Bring down the 5. 2 goes into 5 2 times, which is 4. Subtract, it's 1. Okay, I'm going to bring a decimal up here and a 0, and then bring that down. And 2 goes into 10 5 times. So this would be 12.5%, which we just proved. Okay, so then we have another strip diagram. And they want to figure out what's the percentage of 1/3. Okay, it's the same thing. I personally am going to use the proportion to set this up. So it'd be 3x equals 300. So you divide by 3, and this equals 1. So x comes down. You're going to divide this by 3. Oops, I am so sorry. I'm trying to make this faster because I know this video's been so long. This is 3x equals 100. My apologies. So you divide by 3. This equals 1. X comes down. You divide this side by 3. So now you're going to divide 3 into 100. And just to save some time, this equals 33.3% repeating, because the 3 just goes on. So this will be 33.3% repeating. A lot of these fractions you're going to start getting used to seeing all the time. So like once you see 1/3, you know that equals 33.3%, or as a fraction, decimal is be 0.33 repeating. You'll get used to these more often as you see them. Okay, so let's try next one. So we got 2/5. To set up a proportion, I'm going to see if I can use the shortcut. The reason why is because it's 5. 5s usually go into hundreds. Well, I know I can do 5 times 20 to get to 100. So 2 times 20 is 40. So it means that 2/5 equals 40%. Okay, and we're going to save the bottom for later or just for extra practice. You don't have to do those because it's the same idea as we've just been doing. Okay. Thank you guys. Y'all have a great day. You will have homework, but I'll give you time on Wednesday to do it.